Let's see. There we go. Got a lot of folks jumping in. Welcome, everybody. Oh, there's the big list of folks jumping in. Great.
Whoa, it just keeps exploding.
It just keeps
That's
building
awesome.
and building. This is great. We are going to have a packed house on the webinar today. So excited to see everybody jumping on. We'll give everybody a minute or two to get settled, grab a water, grab a beer, grab whatever you need on a Tuesday afternoon. So whatever your flavor is, go for it. Man, we already we're up to 50 plus people on this. This is great. For everybody joining now, get settled, get comfortable. We were just talking about this as we were prepping. This is by far one of the biggest webinars we put on in a very long time, if not the largest ever. We'll see what the total attendance looks like, but I think now more than ever, people are very in tune to what they're making, why they're making it, what's everybody else making. So we will share all the findings from the compensation survey here in a few minutes. Good to see a lot of familiar faces, especially some that I've talked to recently, but also folks that I haven't talked to in a while. So we will get everybody in. The one thing while everybody's getting settled and in, yes, as you've seen, we've been promoting this a good bit for today's webinar. You will probably notice that Dr. Ben Fuller is not on. We do have a phenomenal person stepping in with Billy, but unfortunately, Ben has a sick kiddo right now. So we hope baby Fuller gets better soon, but have no fear. Billy is very excited about being here. In fact, he did almost the majority, if not all of the analysis behind this, as well as putting our presentation together. So I'm excited to have him and Cliff both here with me to talk all things comp survey. For those that haven't met Billy yet, Billy's our head of product marketing here at Sonar. But prior to even being in product marketing, was VP of RevOps in his previous life. So there's no doubt he's going to be able to drop a couple of nuggets here of insight. But without further ado, Billy, I'll let you present or introduce yourself, and Cliff, I'll let you go after that.
Yeah, awesome. Hey, nice to meet everyone virtually. Billy Boydston, head of product marketing, as Brad mentioned. My background is in fact in revenue operations. I spent the last 10 years working for a telecom company here in Atlanta called Avoxy, and then prior to that was at another SaaS company called Winmo. So excited to step in and help out today. Definitely big shoes to fill, but yeah, thanks for having me.
Of course, Cliff. What's up?
Hey, what's going on, Brad? Really nice to see you again. I'm Cliff. I'm the CRO of Carabiner Group. We are a RevOps consultancy, and just excited to be able to partner together with folks here at WizOps to get this information out into the community, because it's something that's been sorely lacking for the last few years.
Absolutely. I think, again, I'll give the first high five and massive appreciation to Cliff and Ben, who we were all slacking in WizOps one day, like, do we have some good benchmark data for the ops world on all things compensation, titling, roles, responsibilities, which we'll unpack here in a little bit. But again, I think the coolest part about this webinar, obviously we're recording it, we're going to share it out with everybody along with the findings, but this is at its root and at its core what WizOps is about. We have a cool sidebar conversation and we turn it into something that the whole community can really appreciate and gain insight and information from. So can't thank Ben and Cliff enough for bringing it to us. And hey, here we are. A few weeks later after launching the survey, we're ready to run through it. We do have Q&A open. We have a lot of people on right now, 65 as a matter of fact. So I promise we will do our absolute best to answer all the questions that come through the chat and through Q&A. By all means, don't be bashful. Raise your hand, ask questions. We're happy to answer as much as we absolutely can. So good friend John Knight was just letting me know that we've got the chat open, or we got the Q&A open. So let's kick it off. Billy, you're in the driver's seat, so I'll let you click through the slides for us. As just a heads up for everybody, there's a lot of information here. We will dive into what we've really found pertinent and I hope insightful for everybody, but we'll share out the entire survey results after this in the same format with the deck. So we'll go fast through some slides and slower through some, but again, hopefully everybody gains a lot of insight and knowledge on this. Billy, kick us off. Perfect.
Yeah, so to start out, just some firmographic information here. So we received over 500 responses from our community. It spanned across 26 countries and 37 states. 15 industries were represented, but overwhelmingly, and no surprise to me, software was the leader here. In terms of breakout by gender and age, we had a really representation across the board. What stood out here, we had equal representation between males and female in terms of gender representation. I'm not sure if that stood out to you guys as well, Cliff or Brad, but you know, I thought it was really interesting, especially in that 30 to 39 age group, where you're starting to see young professionals come into these roles. Any thoughts on this?
You know, the first thing that sticks out in my mind for it, we've talked about this in previous shOPSTalk episodes and other webinars. I've always asked all of my guests, how'd you get into ops? It's not exactly, it's changing a little bit now, and you're seeing this in the 18 to 29 bracket of almost 24%, a quarter of the people that responded are in that age group. But for a long time, there was no real entry-level ops role. You had a lot of folks start off as an AE or as an SDR or in marketing ops or in demand gen or things like that, consulting even, and then migrate into operations. So not overly surprised to see the majority of folks in the 30 to 39, but I'm pleasantly surprised to see the 18 to 29 bucket be as big as it is. So Cliff, I don't know if you found anything that jumped out on just the demographics here.
The only one out of these that really just, again, based off of like my anecdotal experience, was to see the female representation be less than 50%. At least anecdotally for me, I would say it's usually 60 plus of the folks that I interact with in the ops space that are female. So I thought that was pretty interesting to see. Yeah,
absolutely. Again, I think the healthy mix of diversity in it is just exciting to see in general. It's not overwhelmingly swinging one way or the other, but yeah.
Well, I think that 30 to 39 age bracket bodes really well as we continue to look for more people to step up into leadership positions, that director and VP level that is so in demand right now. People are getting the requisite amount of experience. It's like the right cresting at the right time.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. I think you're seeing too, and we'll get into some of the deeper findings of this, but whether it be from an internal ops person or on the consulting side, but again, healthy mix of how you get to that age range or into that bracket of being in that leadership role.
Yeah, I totally agree. And you know, what I also find interesting is, we'll see it later in the deck here, but a lot of these respondents were in that mid-manager role, but it was a really diversified response of, you know, RevOps folks and sales ops and even FinOps folks. And so like, it's really cool to see just the diversity and the type of respondents that we were able to receive.
Absolutely.
So, you know, when we look at also who are these folks reporting into, again, probably no major shock here to a lot of you guys on the call, but the lion's share we're reporting into your typical revenue CROC, chief sales officer roles. Coming in second here was reporting into the operations teams, but we did see folks reporting directly to the C-suite, the CEO, or even the IT department. I'm not sure if you guys had any additional thoughts there, but really, like, I think that revenue piece really stood out to me as no real shocker.
Yeah, I think one of the things we'll be seeing here, and I'm curious for when we do this again in H2 or at the end of next year, to see how many more of those folks are going to be reporting into IT. There's been a lot of chatter recently around the level of governance and processes when it comes to security and compliance in the RevOps role. And does RevOps own systems? Does it not own systems? I think as we continue to see companies grow, and especially in that Series C, Series D, publicly traded space, there's going to be a lot more of that ownership of it rolling into IT.
Absolutely. We have, Billy can attest to this from the Sonar perspective. We've seen a ton of that. You know, obviously we service the Salesforce group. Obviously, Cliff, you and I have a ton of overlapping customers in this that work with both of us. It is shifting more to the IT world. And I think there's such a heavy focus on governance, compliance. Even, was it last week, the week before this, Meta got fined $275 million for breaking GDPR compliance. that is no small amount of dollars, and even scale it down to some of the sizes of companies that participate in the survey, it's significant enough that you need to have enough governance and compliance around it. And a lot of that historically is sat in the IT world. So I'm not going to be surprised, hot take or my forecast or my prediction for the future, you'll see more and more of it. There's no doubt in my mind.
Yeah, because like a lot of these smaller companies are going through and grabbing all the relevant pen testing data or the relevant SOC 2 information from all their various vendors and making sure that everything is compliant and holding all of that together, because there isn't a CISO at most of these companies, right? So where's that going? Who's actually owning that and taking that mantle on and making sure to catalog all of that?
Totally. I completely agree. I know Billy want to talk about some of the size of the ops teams as well. We found this sort of fascinating, but
Yeah,
I was gonna say
one other standout here to me was when we look at the size of ops teams compared to the total company size. You really see the majority of respondents in the 51 to 100 employee size companies moving to that 2 to 5 employee ops team size. Whereas anything below that 50 employee, you're still really looking at majority just have a single ops contributor, right? And then you don't see a big jump again until you get into that 500 to 1,000 plus employee range, where really then you start to move into the 6 to 10, even 11 to 25 employee ops teams. So
yeah.
it was really an interesting indicator of when these teams are starting to grow.
Yeah, I get this question asked a lot across a lot of different companies, especially early stage companies are like, hey, we've got to bring my first ops person in. And I think historical benchmarks here have been, hey, whenever your company's around 50 total headcount, let's go do that. This data is starting to predict a little bit earlier. Now, granted, we've got some smaller companies participating in this. So by default, if you're in a company less than 50 employees or even less than 10, and you're the ops person responding, we're going to have some data points in that first bracket. But it's now starting to trend towards, you see that third line, C, 51 to 100 employees. Over half the folks that responded have 2 to 5 people. That is a newer shift. I was not overly expecting that. Again, it's kind of displacing a previous benchmark that, hey, you go hire your first ops person around 50. This is telling us that you're now starting to have 2 to 5 people in that 50 to 100 range, and even in the 11 to 50. So yeah, I found that interesting.
Yeah, I think as RevOps continues to gain in popularity, people are understanding what it is, especially from the VCPE perspective. They're pushing for you to have that operations person in place earlier than they did before, because they understand the necessity of having someone who can help mold and strategize around the data, right? Especially now when we're going into a recession, you need to be data-driven in the way that you're thinking about your business planning. How do you work through your go-to-market process? Having all those appropriate data pieces in place as early as possible so you can sort of read the tea leaves faster than you could in the past is really important to getting things right and being able to pivot quickly when the market dictates it.
Yeah. Well, I think the interesting thing there, we've all felt the pain of hiring ops too late. So for anybody here who's talking about getting a new ops job, like you want to be a day earlier than a day late, because you're typically the first thing you're tasked with is, oh, our tech stack is all messed up. We've got to come in and clean up all this tech debt, or somebody installed these 10 different things. We don't know which way's up. People are trying to get ahead of that curve now. There's no doubt. I will say, just to represent the other part of this group, if you look at these 500 to 1,000 employees and even 1,000 plus, they might, obviously this gears a little bit more towards the upper mid-market, lower enterprise, some public companies. Talk about the definition of doing more with less. We even have a couple of public customers who have very lean ops teams. And so you can even see in the 500 to 1,000, 35% still have a 2 to 5 person ops team. Again, epitome of doing more with less and being efficient. So you kind of see.
I wonder how many of those folks too are outsourcing, right? If you're at that size, you're probably bringing in specialists to do the things that they need to do. And then.
Yep. I don't know if we lost Cliff for a little bit. There you go. Internet sneeze. You're right, though. I think the one thing that doesn't get represented, and we've taken a lot of findings away, like, all right, great, this is what we're doing next time when we ask this question is, if you don't have the internal team, are you subsidizing this in a way with consultants, contractors, outside additional help? So that's great.
All right, we'll keep marching on. So roles and responsibilities. We won't drill in too much here. But we did have representation, like I mentioned earlier, across the board. RevOps, obviously, the respondents there. We had 205 respondents from the RevOps community, Sales Ops 105, and a sprinkling across really all of the different categories here. Experience level, as I mentioned earlier, mid-level managers were the lion's share of respondents. And then we also have this broken out by number of direct reports, which, as we look at those mid-level managers, we're really looking at them managing teams of 2 to 5 employees. So these guys are really the ones who, as these companies are moving up in company size, are really taking over those leadership roles, which is really exciting to see.
Yep, absolutely. I'm going to take a quick pause real quick, just because I saw Matt come in on a question. So curious, we'll get our thoughts here, Bill, and I think we'll get Cliff back. He looks like there he is. He's back now. But curious, he had a great question. Curious our thoughts on ops hierarchy design between success, sales engineering, sales ops, rev ops. I think the epitome of that question might be, Matt, are we thinking about how you start to build out your rev ops team? Is it by function, or is it by group, or by department? I've seen a healthy mix of both. I think more than anything, it's going to depend on your business, how you need to support them. That's a good question. We'll add that to the next survey of how we think about the hierarchies. So keep the questions coming, folks.
We work with some companies that are, in that enterprise space where they go both ways, right? They'll have a functional alignment from a systems perspective, but then from the tactical, everything's running departmentally. So you can even have both.
100%. All right, juicy stuff. Now we start talking about payroll. So,
yes.
Billy.
Yeah. So as we start moving into comp, this is in summary where we started to see where respondents fell. You can kind of see that natural trend, that natural curve, where we start to pivot up really into that 100 to 150K range was the general average across all of our respondents. But as we start to break it out by types of respondents, by types of roles that these folks are sitting in, a couple of things that stood out to me. RevOps was the category that had the majority or the largest majority of folks making upward of 150K. But as we look at folks like the Salesforce admins, I think we were talking about this earlier. A lot of these blogs are calling out the fact that within 2 years of experience, you're making north of 100K. But what we're seeing here is that a large number of our respondents were still in that 76 to 100K mark. The tipping point starts to get into that 125K, but any thoughts you guys had on that?
I'd be remiss if we didn't give Ben the high five and shout out here, because this is one of the pieces as we were prepping for this that he was very passionate about. And if anybody follows Ben on LinkedIn or just are around him enough, you'll hear him talk about this. He was even like, man, I hate sometimes the misleading blog posts that come out that, oh, just go get your Salesforce admin certification. You're 100K plus in 2 years. This data teeters around that. Look, around 40+% of folks that are Salesforce admins are still not up to that bar yet. Now, let's be very open and honest here. We've got international folks. We've got folks in different regions, and obviously pay can be a factor of where you are in the world, also the economy that we're in right now. So, but at the whole, and at its source, at its core, I agree with that. Like, I think there's such an upside now. We'll zoom all the way out of this. Ops folks are making good money. I'm really glad to see that. As an ops guy from the last decade of my career before starting Sonar, I wish I was making some of this money that a lot of folks are now making when I was back in ops. But I love seeing the trend go up. I think there's still some catch up there as far as the roles themselves and how we start to really decipher out the monetary value. But yeah, Cliff, I'm curious on your side what you're seeing, especially from a consulting angle.
Yeah, I mean, even for us, right? We've probably hired something in the neighborhood of about 35, 40 people this year, most of them with a Salesforce admin background. And the data holds pretty true, right? If you're someone that's 1 to 3 years in role, I wouldn't expect to make more than 120 max. But realistically, you're probably going to be somewhere in that 90K range is what I've seen across the industry for the last 12 to 18 months. So you'll get there. It might take an extra year or two to get there, to get to that 6-figure mark, but it's super realistic. Just stick with it, keep learning. Don't not take a role because they didn't give you everything, as long as it makes sense for you.
Yep.
The other interesting thing to see here is the business operations and, for me, the RevOps roles, right? We're seeing that the highest pay bands in those two. And I think those are the ones that are typically leading from a strategic perspective as well. So the folks that are coming in from the strategy side are being compensated for it.
Absolutely. Well, there's another strategy trend that I know we'll get to in a couple slides too, so I'll save a little bit of it. But Levin just jumped in, was asking, kind of interesting to know like what the percentage of non-US participants versus US participants. I was looking back on a different screen at some of the data. I believe it was around 10 to 15% were not US based or were international. So kind of benchmarking there for folks, especially if you're on the international side of things. About 15% or so were international versus US. Cool.
We'll keep marching on. So average ops compensation, again, by experience level, broke this out. Everyone's going to receive a copy of this as well. But again, really interesting to see here that, those that are making north of the 200K mark really are sitting in this director, C-suite, senior head of roles. You're not seeing that obviously in these mid-manager and below roles. I wasn't shocked by that, but there are some interesting standouts here as well. And then I believe somebody may have even asked the question if we had this broken out geographically. So we did take samples across a couple of the different categories to start looking at what that salary distribution looks like by region. For example, mid managers in the top 5 states where we receive respondents. You can start to see a breakout here. What I found really interesting here, Texas, I'm not sure why, but it skewed slightly lower than all of the other states across the board, no matter where we were looking.
No state income tax.
No state income tax.
There you go.
We don't have Florida.
You can pay people less with the same level of take home, right?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, if you look, for example, senior ICs, 62% of those in Texas were in the 76 to 100 range, whereas in New York, 100 to 125, or in Georgia, very similar. So geographically as a whole, though, not wild swings one way or the other.
Yeah, my only I'd say 2 cents, and probably not worth even that much. I think as we look even ahead to next year, everybody's going through planning right now, and there was a one-way door I think a lot of people walked through during the pandemic of, look, we're doing our jobs. All 3 of us are remote. Billy lives 3 miles, I think, that way. We're still virtual, we're still remote, right? Cliff, I come see you all the time up in New Jersey and New York. So, but again, I think we've all become accustomed to being able to work virtually. I think salaries and pay is going to start catching up to that. So I don't know what this will trend towards next year, but my hypothesis, it might be a little bit more murky, because I think people are going to start making money based off their skill set and based off the demand that the market is driving towards, not necessarily locale. So
I think we're already there.
Yeah, I agree. I think this was a year where people had to feel that. And I think more from talking with other executives and founders, I think a lot of people are starting to plan their hiring model next year and the way they're budgeting a little differently now. So a little bit of catch up. Great, keep cruising.
Yeah. So as we continue to look at total compensation, another standout here, bonus comp. So 60% of respondents were actually receiving bonus compensation as part of their total compensation packages. And it starts to scale down as you look across those levels of experience. But really the tipping point, even your junior ICs and your graduates right out of college have bonus compensation included in their total package, which for me, when I came out of college 20 years ago now, I would have been super excited to see this, whereas I think I was presented as the job gets a set salary. But any insight you guys have here?
I'm gonna join you on the get off my lawn old man rant. Back in my day when I started my career in ops, I didn't have variable comp, but I will tell you, I am thrilled to see it happening. We'll go one layer deeper soon about how you're graded on that and what you're actually rewarded for and why. But to no surprise, I'm going to go on both ends here. I am a little surprised, but again, pleasantly surprised that first entry-level jobs and graduates are 33% of you are getting the variable comp. That's great. At the same time, I'm kind of squinting and trying to understand what director and C-suite person, the 22.77% don't have a bonus or a variable comp attached. That could be the head scratcher part of it. But all in, I mean, look, we know the importance of RevOps or ops in general, and to see people get bonus on it is great.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that roughly 23% are folks that didn't have an OKR or set KPIs going into the role when they took it on. I'd be shocked to see that not change in a year 2 or year 3 of a role once there was more data and understanding. The one thing that doesn't show that we did have in the data was just the wide range of what a bonus could be. I think on the low end, we saw bonuses around like $5,000, and then that director C-suite level bonuses as high as $200K. So that could be, it could be a really wide swath.
For sure. Totally.
Yeah, I mean, to that point, and we kind of got
Next slide.
the raw data broken out here, because I thought that there was a lot of valuable information here. Again, as you guys are able to digest this report once received. But another standout here, not only are these folks receiving bonus compensation, monetary bonus compensation, but they're also seeing stock options as part of their total compensation package. Which was really exciting. And, I think from a graduate right out of college job, to see 33% of those folks receiving shares in their organizations was pretty shocking.
Yeah. Cliff, I don't know if you have any thoughts on especially on the equity shares, a lot of different nomenclatures there, but yeah, any thoughts?
I think it's just really important that we do see that this data runs this way, right? So many folks are getting equity. Have an understanding of what your equity means, understand what the triggers are around your equity, understand what that's going to do to you from a taxing perspective should you have to exercise. So when you guys are looking for your next role, have conversations around extended exercise periods, what's the class of share that you're getting. And I'm happy to talk to any of you guys about this as well offline, but equity is really a crapshoot for so many people. So if you're in a position where equity is good for you and you have the ability to take it, great. If you want to fight for more cash in lieu of equity, I think those are just different things that everyone's going to have to think through when you look at your own personal situation and figure out what's best for you as you continue to grow into your career.
Totally. Ask the appropriate questions. Cliff offered it. I'll do the same. Anybody that has questions about how equity works in companies, how should I be thinking about asking these questions? Certainly every company is different. I will start there, but as an employee, just remember this, and we tell our folks all the time as we bring new folks on, and we actually did a lunch and learn about what does equity mean at Sonar and how do I even think about it? We were very direct and open. This is a part of your total compensation package. You should be able to squint and at least see some monetary value out of it. Now, obviously it goes hand in hand with the growth and the success of the company, but it is, I don't want to call it taboo, but it's been tough for a lot of people to understand how do I equate this into my overall comp. Needless to say, I'm really glad to see people are receiving it. I know our theory of it here at Sonar is everybody should have some skin in the game. Everybody should have that little bit of extra excitement that wakes you up in the morning, and subsequently sometimes it keeps you up a little bit at night, but you want to have that drive. You want to have that enrollment of your employees. So yeah, to Cliff's point,
Agency is a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely it is.
All right. So then in terms of compensation satisfaction, right? Like we started to look at how are these folks getting measured? Like what are their targets? Like how are they actually being comped? And OKRs, project completion, company revenue, like there are a lot of success measures here, but nothing truly specific to me that stood out. And then also, one follow-up question that I wish we had asked that we didn't ask here is like, do these make sense to you? Like, do you feel like there's something that you can achieve or that you have control over how you're being measured for success? Which hopefully in a follow-up conversation we can do as well.
Totally.
And another good question that I think would piggyback on that. did they have a say or any input into the creation of the OKRs?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we're all, 'tis the season right now. We're all going through planning,
Yeah.
goal setting for next year and how we start to think about that. I would encourage everybody here, to Cliff's point, I don't want to say push back, have constructive conversations. If you are getting signed up for an OKR, for it to be assigned to company revenue, for a KPI, however you're measuring it, have constructive conversations, give your opinion, be respectful of it, obviously, but go and understand it. If it's, especially if it's part of your package, your compensation package, you don't want a goal to be set that is absolutely never achievable, but also from, I'll tell you, from a business owner perspective, you want to set your goals to where they stretch. We work hard. You also have to ensure or isolate your business to make sure that somebody doesn't hit 7,000% of their goal and they just walked away with probably too much money. So it all has to be balanced and make sense. The one thing that I noticed here that I thought was interesting was, and maybe this is the BizOps folks and more of the systems operations folks, but the project completion and uptime support, like that's a big chunk of that. That's almost 30%. And it has less to do with the company strategy, the company revenue. You think of OKRs, objectives and key results, is OKR for the acronym. So when you think about that, I found that kind of interesting, that less is due to exact company revenue and company strategy and more towards binary. Are we getting our stuff done or not?
Well, it's interesting, right? Because project completion can be the KRs for the O's, right? If you need to be able to implement system A, B, or C in order to achieve the outcome that you're looking for, project completion could fold into that.
Very true.
100%. I think the one guidance I would give here is, your company is going to set this from the top down, whether you take the OKR model, the KPI model, the project completion model. Again, just fully understand it, know what you're signing up for. Just be open, honest, and transparent about, hey, this is an achievable project completion date. Is this realistic? Great. If not, push back a little bit. You can't build Rome in a day. So just know what you're signing up for.
Absolutely. So, I think overall, as we start talking about salary satisfaction, what was really exciting to see here for me was the majority of respondents were pretty satisfied with their overall compensation, which was a super positive going into this. I wasn't sure what kind of result we'd see. And really, when we start looking at that, dissatisfied, very dissatisfied really made up a very small number of respondents here.
Yeah, I joked. I was like, I wonder if the very dissatisfied were all answering at the same time on one of our virtual happy hours that we do through WizOps. I don't know.
But what I will say is we did look at it, not only by role, by experience level as well. And where we saw higher numbers of satisfaction really fell into those marketing ops, RevOps, and even the Salesforce admin roles. Whereas we had a little bit skewed a little bit higher in dissatisfaction on the BizOps side. So I'm not sure if those uptime and the service deliverables were really impacting here, or if it was a salary piece. But when we look at experience level as well, no shock, your directors, your C-suite, those making the higher compensation seem to have higher satisfaction, more skin in the game, perhaps. Whereas it's skewed a little bit more neutral or dissatisfied when you look at some of the junior or entry level roles.
Yeah, I'll just be transparent on my side of this, the way I interpret this. I remember my first job, my first two jobs, my first three jobs, and so much of it early in your career, you're talking to other folks in your circles, your friends, and one of the biggest measuring sticks is how much are you making? So of course, you're always chasing that next person or your next friend or comparing yourself with others. I got some of the best advice in my career, I think, from one of my previous bosses, like, don't rush your profession. There's a reason why job descriptions come out and say 2 to 5 or 5 to 7 or 7 to 10 years. Like, you have to walk the mile long enough. You have to earn those stripes. And I remember rushing through it. I was like, man, how quickly do I go from analyst to manager? And how quickly do I go from manager to director? And I was excited at that point, a little young, dumb, and naive, of course. But I think that's why you see on this right graph some of the dips and valleys of dissatisfaction to satisfaction the further you go up into your career.
Yeah, I think there's a couple other things too, right? Typically, when you're further along in your career, you have a much better understanding of your strengths and weaknesses, the things that excite you. You're able to go out and look for roles that fulfill those desires. So you get higher comp and you're doing something that you're passionate about versus I'm doing this job and maybe I don't want to do it, or maybe I don't feel like I'm going to have a chance to have enough of an impact. So I think that's part of it. And then sort of pivoting on that impact piece, right? Gen Z that's coming in at that as that grad first job, they want to have impact, right? They want to feel like what they're doing is making a difference. And they've also really been trained, whether it was like through that SDR model previously or what we're seeing now, to be very achievement oriented, but quick career trajectory jumps. And I think that's why, like at least on the SDR side of the world, we've seen like junior SDR, lead, team lead, like all these little hops that someone would take every 3 months or so, and they feel like they're getting this pat on the back. And that really doesn't exist in the RevOps space or within the ops space in general, right? There's so much to learn, and you have to really soak it in and learn by doing it consistently over a significant period of time to build up the skill set and the level of experience across all of the different variables that could occur in order to really bring the value to another level of compensation, to that next level of satisfaction. So
Absolutely.
wow.
We had one question come through, and I'll just kind of toss that here to get y'all's opinion. What are your thoughts on how salaries have changed year over year? Just kind of pausing there. There's no doubt we've seen this is a direct correlation to some of market conditions as well as just demand. But think about both of those in hindsight. Yeah, salaries have gone up. I'm hesitant to say I think salaries go down in this arena. I don't think that's going to be the case. But where I would encourage everybody, don't necessarily expect them to continue to rise at the same rate. And that has nothing to do, candidly, with your performance, has nothing to do with you as a professional or you as an individual. So much of how companies operate and run are based off public markets and the economic conditions. And so just again, as someone who hires a lot of people, but also as someone who has gone and fought for my own salary in previous lives and things, you just have to be aware of all conditions that are part of it, and don't take it personally if you're going to your employer to say, hey, market's hot right now, I need at least a 10% bump, and they're not able to get you all the way there. It might have nothing to do with you, it have everything to do with the market and just what's going on in the world right now. So there's your PSA.
Yeah. And I would also echo that, like, ops roles are booming right now, and we're not slowing down in terms of seeing these roles get staffed. And so it's still keeping competitive. And with that, you're able to negotiate at a better clip from a salary perspective. Maybe not as much as you could a year ago, but I still see it as very competitive.
Yeah, just like talk through the numbers a bit. Like RevOps, had 5,600 people in a RevOps role, mostly director or VP level, back on LinkedIn in January with about 11,000 open roles. If you look at the data from mid-September, that number jumped to 17,000 people in RevOps roles with over 35,000 job openings, and that's just going to increase. I don't have the data around sales ops, MAR ops, CS ops, biz ops, but I have to imagine it's sort of similar, right? In a recession or a time when you need to be able to do more with less, the way to do that as a company is by having a really strong operational core where you can drive efficiency and make sure that you're driving your I can never say EBITDA proper anyway, right? You have to you're driving your margin, right? It's the only way to do it.
Totally. We've got a few more slides left, so yeah, this was an interesting one.
Yeah. So, after we started thinking through satisfaction, how satisfied you are in your role, some of the follow-up questions were like, why did you leave your last role? Right. So what stood out to me here was a very small majority of these folks, pay was a leading factor in why they were leaving. Really new career challenges, lack of progression, it all came down to career growth. On why a large majority of folks in these roles transition to their next job. And I think it's really it's A, the investment in the person, but B, the understanding in that person's responsibility, and then having a support system in place with some of these, as some of these teams are expanding, to echo off, like to bounce ideas off each other, to learn from each other. And I think that was really important in this data.
Just to call it out openly, like again, we talk about comp. That's been the root of this 12% left for increased pay. So it's not all compensation. And again, going back to the equity side, the bonus side, think about your overall compensation package, not just what it is that's hitting your direct deposit twice a month. So I found that super interesting.
People don't leave because they're not happy with the work, right? They usually trudge through for that, but they leave bad bosses and they leave bad companies.
Yep, agree with that. The interesting one for me was poor work environment. Not to think environmentally as far as like the physical brick and mortar, because so many folks are now virtual, but that was a little bit of a head scratcher. I'd be lying to you if I didn't say that.
Yeah, but I'll say, I mean, I think company culture goes a long way, and I mean, people use culture in a variety of ways, right? But I think that as we looked at the age group of the respondents, like this is becoming much more and more important to young people entering the workforce. So I think culture and career progression really, I mean, obvious standouts to me.
Absolutely.
So then lastly, we started looking at it by age group, and again, the two call outs here that I'll say, first off, downsizing, really the external impacts, downsizing and relocation really accounted for a small number of why people are leaving. It wasn't due to downsizing. Relocation is a weird one because of a lot of us are remote now. Any thoughts there?
I'll echo what I know Ben is saying as he's either going to watch the recording of this, obviously when he gets a chance to. Who's making people reload anymore? I remember that was Ben's like just emphatic response when we were going through the data earlier. But yeah, some positions are still out there that are physically like tied to a location, and some industries are out there for it. Not to say that the ops industry is, ops supports many different industries. I can reflect personally. My wife does not work from home all the time. She works for a law firm. That is still an industry that is 100% in person. That is not fully walked through the virtual door, so to say, the one-way door. So there are certain industries that are out there. So take that with a little bit of a grain of salt with the reload. But again, I think just looking over the age ranges, I think it was interesting to see the new career challenge for 30% of people that are 50 plus years old. I love that. I'm not going to displace it. Look, it doesn't matter how old you are for you to want a new career challenge. Go get it. That's the exciting part of ops. I think that speaks to also ops is booming, and it does not discriminate on age. So I found that really interesting to see that high of a number at that high of an age range.
Great. And then finally, recruitment. So where are folks going to look for roles? The standout here, and I'll say, I mean, it's where I always go, is my own personal network. I'm looking at communities. I'm looking at who I'm connected with on LinkedIn. I think networking is huge, especially nowadays. There are a lot of additional channels for finding roles, but was really excited to see this, just the number of respondents, and it's not going through things like recruiters, although recruiters aren't bad. I've dealt with several myself. From a business perspective, organic recruitment is much better.
Oh yeah. This one was interesting to me. I loved just in general seeing that we've got 15 people responding just with community. Just personally speaking, nothing makes my day more than when someone reaches out in WizOps and says, just want to send you a quick thank you. I found my next job because of this community, or you hooked me up with somebody inside this community when I was catching up with you. I was talking to Vanessa Grant today about that. I was talking last week with Crystal Deal, two folks that are big in the WizOps space. The one thing that I can just give high fives to, and I'm going to bucket the personal network into this with the ops folks in general. We have some big hearts, man. There are people that just genuinely care about other people in the operations world that are willing to lend a hand, jump on a Zoom without any expectations of, hey, pay this favor back. I think more than anything, we all take a ton of pride in what we do. And I think we take a ton of pride in the people we surround ourselves with. Nothing still makes me happier than getting in person with a bunch of ops folks and just nerding out. Cliff and I did it, and Bill, you were there at Dreamforce this year when we all just sit around a bar and have a drink or two and have fun. But it just goes to show you those relationships you build, whichever medium you build them in, community, LinkedIn, personal networks. I think they are the driving force for how you accelerate your career. Full stop.
And ops is a small world, right? We're all dealing with the same kinds of challenges, the same kinds of pressures. And 9 times out of 10, the people that we're going into and giving those data points to or building systems for just don't understand, right? It's like, I need this report by the end of the week, make it happen. Yeah. They don't understand everything that's intertwined in there and why the systems are architected the way they are. And yeah, there's just a lack of empathy from most of our coworkers.
Yep. I used to joke, even when I was running ops, like I felt like I was the guy in the back corner that kept the lights on, the wheels spinning, but no one ever really totally knew what I did. And so I think more than anything, that is now coming to light. And I think if you see how ops folks are beginning and continuing to operate now, you know what we weren't talking about 10 years ago, Billy, in our operations world? Hey, let me go run a sprint and let me use, fancy developer tooling to help go and run and qualify and justify how we're running through these processes. So yes, ops is evolving. We're taking all these different plays from product and engineering. Errol and I have talked about that a million times about how we're taking plays out of product management playbook, but that is so true. And I think you're beginning to see a higher level of empathy and understanding for what ops does. So not to go too far off on a tangent of how you found your current role, but that's just the ops and the going to bat for it. So believe it or not, that is it for the slides. We did have one question come in, and I'm curious to get y'all's thoughts on this. Have you noticed any transitional trends for folks coming into any of the ops roles, i.e. PMO teams shrinking and losing folks to ops roles? I don't know, Cliff, are you seeing anything like that trend-wise that you can put your finger on?
I don't know. Give me a minute to think about that one.
Oh, I can't necessarily say it from a PMO perspective. I think PMOs and working for a massive Fortune 500 company long time ago, that's my interpretation of PMOs. You're a big, massive entity. But I will say one thing that I find interesting, Cliff, I will get your opinion here. There's some pretty solid fluidity right now between internal operations and consulting operations. And I am here for it. Like, obviously love Carabiner Group and everything that we partner with you guys on, but like just watching how someone can go from, I was a RevOps manager at this software company. I'm now a RevOps architect for Carabiner Group, and not to say anybody's leaving Carabiner, but they might transition to another internal role. That's great. Like there's
a lot of fluidity, right? There's a lot of overlap of skill set, which is great. Just thinking about that question more, like we're working with a client right now, large Fortune 100 company, directed from the C-suite is, oh, hey, we're merging these departments. I need a full understanding of how RevOps is going to drive our 2 largest departments. That makes up about 4,000 employees. How do we make sure to drive that forward in a way where we have unified process, unified billing, and unified systems across both those departments, where those departments used to be 4 separate departments. So, RevOps is at the heart of all of it, and it's happening more and more and more.
Music to my ears. I love that.
Lots of opportunity, right?
It is. I think if anything, and again, we've got a few more minutes. If anybody has any more questions, please drop them into the Q&A. I was having this conversation with Faraz Abdel from Outreach. We were up visiting him in Raleigh 2 weeks ago. He brought up a really good point. He's from a RevOps perspective at Outreach, they do govern and control a lot of the systems that come in place. And it does extend. He's got a massive RevOps team in general, don't get me wrong. But there is not a department that doesn't coordinate with him or doesn't come to him. He has to work across every single department, even all the way down to, hey, we're thinking about this new HR specific tool. He's asking very pointed questions. Great, tell me other tools that it integrates with. Are we integrating that with Slack? Are we putting that in with Salesforce for some reason? So again, I think you're just getting more and more of the breadth and depth of ops in every company. I'm here for. Again, that's an exciting thing. I think everybody should be proud about that and own that. All right, looking for any other questions? If not, I'm sure everybody's probably going to be in a 10-minute, yes, please give me some time back before my next call in 9 minutes now. So yeah, Cliff, any last thoughts, projections or forecasts or predictions for next year when you start to think about ops and comp and everything else?
Oh, question just came in.
Looks like get me off the hot seat.
For RevOps sales ops roles, do you recommend specializing in tools or learning a variety of tools? I think there's value in both, right? Being able to understand the most used tools as a whole within the ecosystem, whether you're talking about a very specific one or just having a generalized understanding of how an SEP works versus a map, right? I think it's very beneficial so that you can come in and know what you're talking about from a holistic perspective. But then from the day-to-day tactical, as you're growing into your career, pick one or two things and really learn them well, because that will serve you.
Totally. I couldn't agree more. I would fully recommend becoming very fluent in many different technologies, only because that will further allow you to go solve many different types of problems. Don't just go become a Pardot expert to become a Pardot expert. Go become a Pardot expert so that you can help solve really challenging marketing automation problems. Those skills and that piece of technology can translate over, not 100% to other systems like Marketo or Eloqua or Marketing Cloud, but holistically they work similar in that same way. On the other flip side of that, become a specialist and become very well oriented, but man, technology changes every day. And if you spend too much time just becoming a master of one, you might not be able to think about some of the other ones. Lastly, rely on your vendors for this. Like that is their software. That is what they are experts of. Consider them an extension of your team. And if you're not a master of a piece of technology, you have a CSM waiting. They're excited to talk to you. Let them help you. So don't be afraid to ask for help. I think we got one more question that just came in. I'm going to close that one out. All right, last question. Where do you see the RevOps role ending up long term? Do you see it merging with BizOps?
Is Ben not secretly on this call?
I was going to say, is Ben trolling us right now? Is that a Ben question? Yeah, Cliff, I'll let you kick us off.
I mean, Ben's answer is that BizOps and IT are going to eat all of it and take it over. I know that we've had many a conversation around it.
Yeah,
I think RevOps will stick around on its own right. I still think that RevOps is going to get a strategic seat at the table of its own to truly be that neutral party that's helping be the arbiter of data, and that's Switzerland. So yeah, that's where I see it heading over the next few years.
Billy, what do you think?
I would agree with Cliff there. I think that they have their unique spaces. I think that you're going to see a lot more blending of responsibilities there. Like there's going to be a blurry line between the two, but I still think that there is a place at the table for both those roles.
Totally. It's almost, I can't say it's impossible to answer that directly, only because RevOps at a 100-person company looks drastically different than RevOps at 1,000 or 10,000. Same thing for BizOps. And so I think you might see some interesting unification and then actually parsing back out. That is not going to be a surprise to me if you see this ebb and flow, like, hey, we're going to put them in under this part of our journey for our business. But now it actually makes sense for us to have dedicated people there. That's fine. Yep. It shouldn't offend anybody. That is just how companies grow. I'll leave you with this hot take that someone, I'll leave them anonymous, gave me the other day. Very polarizing topic here. Similar to this question, do you think we'll have Salesforce admins in the next few years? And their hot take was, no. And it goes in line with starting to think, it's like, well, it's an entry point for the Salesforce ecosystem. One, you have to go get your admin certification to go get additional certifications and to further your career. So I don't think it's going to stop as an entry point. I think the theory that this person had was more of, if we see RevOps evolving the same way we've seen product and engineering evolving, you could just have two really defined routes you go in your Salesforce journey. You can go the BizOps and RevOps strategic route. How am I thinking about territory design? How am I thinking about commission structure? How am I thinking about process improvement? And then you got the technical route which goes back to all the systems we talk about, the development side of things. But they made a really good point. In product and engineering, you don't really have a product admin or an engineering admin. You just have these defined disciplines that parse out. And so super hot take, but I can squint and maybe see it. I don't know. Time will tell.
I think that RevOps will end up owning BizOps. I'll take the opposite stance as Ben on that one. But yeah, to your point, I think we'll continue to see the Salesforce admin role rather. There's just not enough of them. Full stop.
Yep.
Right.
Demand is high. Demand is higher than ever, obviously through trying times and market conditions that are happening right now. I hope we don't have to bring that part up again next year when we do the same survey, but heck, we might. But either way, I would say we zoom out of all this. We're excited about what we found in this survey. I think this opens a lot of folks' eyes. Even some of the questions that came through, like, hey, can I get a copy of this? I'd like to share it with my HR team so they can see benchmarking. Absolutely. Everybody that joined the webinar got the first sneak peek. We'll be sharing the results in the same format for everybody to find. You can go to wizops.org and find it. Last but not least, Cliff, Billy, thank y'all for jamming on all things ops, comp, Ben. We wish Baby Fuller the speediest of recoveries. I hope y'all start feeling better, but can't thank both of you guys enough for jumping on and jamming with us. Thanks,
Hey, thanks for making this happen. You know, like this was beginning of November brainchild, and here we are 6 weeks later showing data. Like I can't believe how quickly this all happened. Thank you to the community at large for helping supply the data. Right, I think we had over 500 respondents within the first 48 hours. So thank you guys for just being super responsive and helping us get this out there for everyone in a way that protects all of your privacy. So thank you.
100%. I'm seeing a lot of familiar names and faces on the invite list or the attendee list. Thank you all for joining. We're going to be back with more webinars, more surveys, especially as we go into the new year. So stick around, stay tuned to WizOps. We will talk to you all soon. I hope everybody has a safe, happy, healthy holiday season. Don't do anything that Billy wouldn't do. I wouldn't say me, but don't do anything that Cliff wouldn't do either. So hope you all have a great holiday. We'll talk to you all soon. Cheers.
Take care, guys.
Thanks, guys.